In 1986, 3 lighthouse keepers were stationed at Blackthorn Point, a jagged, wine-lashed peninsula off the coast of Nova Scotia. The lighthouse was old, battered by a century of storms, and reachable only by boat when the tides behaved. Despite its remoteness, the post was coveted for its decent pay and quiet routine. But among older seafarers, Blackthorn had a reputation, not for danger, but for something harder to explain. They called it the place where time sinks. He pointed it out to Nathan, who suggested maybe he'd tracked in water without realizing. But Milo caught him one night standing on the edge of the outer platform, staring into the waves for nearly an hour, unmoving, like he was listening to something. Milo didn't buy it, especially not after he wiped the floor clean, only to find the prints again the next morning. The 3-man rotation included Ellis Dunn, 54, a stoic veteran of the service, Nathan Rourke, 38, an ex-Navy radio technician known for his discipline, and Milo Fares, a 22-year-old fresh recruit on his first long-term assignment. At first, the work was as expected, mundane but structured. He was gone for 3 hours. When he returned, he was soaked to the bone despite clear skies. His skin was pale, his lips blue. He refused to speak. That night, Milo saw light under the door to Ellis's quarters. Midway through the second week of storm season, Boyle had gone missing. The Coast Guard assumed he slipped during a walk and was pulled out to sea. No splash, no scream, just gone. But every time he passed the main stairwell, he felt watched. Not from above, from below. But Nathan swore he'd seen Boyle walking across the rocks barefoot toward the cliffs. All they found was a single bloody footprint on the edge of the rocks, facing out to sea. His eyes no longer seemed to see what was in front of him. He didn't blink. He barely slept. Not white noise, a low mechanical hum, like the vibration of something massive, deep underwater. One morning, the others awoke to find his boots sitting neatly by the main door. The outer gate was wide open. Ellis was gone. When he peeked through the crack, he saw Ellis scratching spiral patterns into the wooden walls with the point of his compass. Just bubbles rising near the rocks, and then silence. Over and over, deep enough to bleed. There was no splash, no trace. The weather was cold but manageable. Supplies were stocked, the beacon turned smoothly, and the foghorn bellowed like clockwork. When the rescue boat finally arrived, they found him curled in the corner, shaking and repeating a single phrase. The station's routine offered rhythm and comfort. For about 3 days, he now lives inland, hundreds of miles from the nearest shoreline. That's when Milo began noticing the footprints. They were faint, wet tracks across the hallway floor. Narrow, barefoot, smaller than any of theirs. Ellis didn't comment. Milo crept up the spiraling stairs toward the beacon room. Week 2 arrived, and with it came the voices. His face was expressionless, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. It started with the radio. Then, without another word, he stepped backward off the balcony. Milo tuned in to record the weekly status log and caught something strange. Soft whispering, garbled but rhythmic, bleeding in between open frequencies. He assumed it was signal bleed, maybe from fishing boats, but Nathan froze when he heard it. "That's not maritime," he muttered. The following afternoon, Ellis volunteered to check the foghorn wiring, a routine task that should have taken 30 minutes. Nathan finally confessed something that had been weighing on him. 2 years ago, during his last tour at Blackthorn, there had been a fourth keeper named Boyle. Like he heard something, Nathan said. It's like he was following a sound only he could hear. He stopped eating entirely, pacing the tower at night, whispering things like the sea remembers and they re-singing in the undertow. Milo tried to focus on tasks, polishing the lens, recording weather logs, maintaining the power cell. Ellis's condition worsened. Nathan wasn't on duty. They searched the cliffside, dripping wet. His uniform clung to his frame like he'd just come from the sea. Milo wanted to call for immediate extraction, but the radio had turned to static. Nathan began keeping watch through the night. He insisted they take turns sleeping in shifts. The sleep came hard. One evening, just after 3 a.m., Milo awoke to the sound of the lens turning. That was impossible. The door stood wide open. The wind howled through the glass slats. Nathan stood there, barefoot. "They're not lonely anymore," Nathan whispered. Milo sprinted down the stairs, out into the cold. He barricaded himself in the cellar for 2 full days, eating from emergency rations, whispering prayers he barely remembered. There in the light now. They watched through the light. Ellis was never found. Neither was Nathan. Milo was discharged and never returned to sea, but he never turns on the porch light at night. In the summer of 1973, an older couple, Arthur and Elaine Madden, volunteered to manage Lantern Hill Lighthouse, a crumbling stone tower perched on a barren, tit islet off the coast of northern Maine, not far from the Bay of Fundy. The light station had been decommissioned once in the 1950s, but reactivated recently due to increased shipping traffic. It was barely maintained. Old fuel systems, manual mechanisms, no radio, and no backup generator. Only a flare kit and a tide clock. The Maddens didn't mind. They were both in their 60s, retired educators, and had endured personal tragedy the year prior. The loss of their only daughter in a drowning accident. But even on the first night, Elaine mentioned the tower smelled like something left too long in the dark. Arthur thought the solitude might be good for Elaine's depression. Elaine, in turn, hoped the isolation might help Arthur stay sober. The contract was for 30 days, the same exact descriptions of the sky, 3 days in a row. She even found a page she didn't remember writing that ended with, "He sleeps beneath the oil." They arrived with optimism and a crate of canned food, but when he checked, the whole system was disengaged. No fuel had been drawn yet. The lens glowed a dim red, not its usual yellow. He shut it down manually, disturbed. The lighthouse was cold and damp, built in 1876, with salt-eaten walls and steps that creaked under weight. It had a date carved into it, August 13th, 1903. No name, so the words she would not feed the light. But the view was breathtaking. Endless black sea to the east and jagged cliffs to the west. Elaine stayed near the cellar where the oil drums were stored. Arthur assumed rats. He set traps. Nothing took the bait. Arthur busied himself with cleaning the lamp, housing, and reviewing the old maintenance logs. And No Eyes standing at the end of her cot, whispering, "It needs flame, or it will take flesh." Elaine a poet in her youth, began journaling again. She swore the sound moved too slowly, with gaps in between, like pacing. She began noticing patterns. Always at 2:12 a.m., the fuse lit, but no fire. The kit was waterlogged, despite being sealed and stored in a dry cabinet, always beneath the bedroom. But by day 6, she noticed something strange. Her entries began to repeat. "We brought something in," she said. When she asked what he heard, he said, "It's learning our names now. Dozens of them, each tighter than the last. Same metaphors, same phrases. Underneath it, scratched into the wall with some kind of hook, were the words." Arthur dismissed it. Stress, perhaps. Then they heard the scratching. It began beneath the floorboards. Slow, sharp noise, like fingernails or claws raking across the underside of the plank floors. Elaine became convinced it wasn't rats. The sea, visible through the slits in the wall, looked black and still, too still. On the 10th night, the lighthouse beacon lit itself an hour before sunset, pressed against the glass, circling. Some were hunched, some were crawling. One looked just like Arthur, but it had no eyes, and its mouth was filled with ash. Arthur thought he'd bumped the crank. 2 days later, while walking near the tide pools at low tide, Elaine found a small wooden cross, barely wedged into a rock crevice. She brought it inside. That night, the scratching returned, louder than before. It echoed up the stairwell. Dame sleeping in the bedroom. Arthur moved a cot into the Lynn's room. That's when the dreams began. Elaine would wake in the night, gasping, swearing she'd seen a man with burned skin. Arthur had his own nightmare. The beacon filled with 100 writhing hands, all pressing against the glass, trying to claw their way into the tower. Locals claim they still see the glow of the beacon some nights, even though the entire Lynn's assembly was removed. They decided to signal for early pickup, but the flare failed. Arthur tried to laugh it off. It's just an old tower playing tricks. Elaine didn't laugh. On the 18th night, Arthur began to change. He talked less, ate less. Elaine would catch him standing in the middle of the stairwell, listening. By the 21st day, he was writing in a logbook obsessively, not weather updates or lens reports, but spirals. Elaine begged him to leave the cross outside. Arthur ignored her. On the 24th night, the tower went cold. Not just cool, freezing. The oil lamps refused to light. Their breath fogged. Elaine heard the scratching again, now above her, in the attic crawl space. She climbed to check, armed with a hammer. And what she found wasn't a rat. It was a child's shoe, moldy, ancient, but unmistakably real. The girl fed the fire. The mother did not. Now we wait. She ran to wake Arthur, but he was gone. His cot was cold. Hatch was open. She found his boots by the top stair. Panicking, she lit the last remaining flare, not to signal help, but to keep the light burning. For some reason, that felt necessary. The flare's red light filled the tower. In it, she saw figures outside the lens. She locked herself in the cellar. At dawn, the beacon still glowed, but no flame was burning. The rescue boat arrived on day 30, as scheduled. They found Elaine sitting in a corner, clutching her journal. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her voice was hoarse from whispering. The walls of the cellar were scratched with one phrase: "If the light goes out, they wake up." Arthur Madden was never recovered. A single shoe was found on the tide rocks, along with a cracked compass and a blackened strip of journal paper. The lighthouse at Lantern Hill was permanently shut down the following year. No one has volunteered to stay there since. In the autumn of 2004, a remote maritime, Simon brought a retired surveyor and his college-age son to Graymarsh. Reef, a wind-beaten speck of rock floating 40 miles off the coast of Wellington Bay, a lesser-known inlet in the Pacific Northwest. When Paul heard that the Coast and Signal Authority was looking for short-term caretakers for an unmanned lighthouse station on Graymarsh, He pitched it as a peaceful, off-grid getaway. The post involved basic equipment monitoring, lens cleaning, tide data entry, and fuel checks, nothing more. Their names were Paul Hargrove, 57, and his son Jesse, 20, a marine biology student who had just taken a semester break after burnout from his second year at university. They'd be alone, but only for 6 weeks. Supply ships only visited twice a month. The rest of the time, it was just the ocean, the fog, and the tower. Not loud, but deep, like a slow bass note playing from somewhere under their feet. It lasted for 5, maybe 10 minutes. Just after 1 a.m., Paul journaled grilled fish and commented often on the silence. "Quiet, like a church underwater," he once said. The generator ran smooth. The beacon flickered properly. The lighthouse's narrow living quarters, while creaky and cold, felt solid. The lighthouse stood like a weathered finger above the sea, surrounded by sharp rocks and shoals. The first 10 days were easy. Jesse sketched tide pools and logged starfish counts, Ks. Then the vibrations began. It started on the 12th night. K, Jesse mentioned it first. A faint humming sound beneath the floorboards. Paul thought it might be pressure buildup in the tank room, but it happened again the next night, and the one after that. The tower was made of solid brick and reinforced concrete. There shouldn't be anything hollow enough to echo steps. He'd forgotten about it during the chaos. That night, they reviewed the footage and found something. Saul was at 1:13 a.m. Its limbs looked too long. Its back was hunched unnaturally. The head turned slowly, and though the lens was blurry, Jesse swore its face had no mouth. "We can call in early," he said. No one cares about tide logs. Always a little louder. By the 3rd time, they both felt it in their bones. Not just a sound, but a tremor. Like something massive shifting beneath the reef. But on the 22nd night, Koya, he spotted something outside the glass slit of the beacon tower. A figure in the water, submerged, staring straight up at him from below the waves. Then came the footsteps. Jesse heard them first. Slow, deliberate pacing, not above, not in the stairwell, inside the walls. Paul didn't believe him till the following night, when the footsteps were accompanied by something else. Breathing, soft, steady, wet. Paul opened the hatch to the service ducts and found nothing but condensation and rust. But the outer hatch was unlatched, and the spiral staircase up to the beacon was wet. Still, they started locking their bedroom doors at night. On day 19, Jesse retrieved the wildlife camera he had set up to record sea otter movements near the South Bluff. When Jesse awoke, just before sunset, Paul was gone at the 2:04 a.m. mark. For exactly 5 seconds, the camera caught a tall, humanoid figure standing at the waterline. Then the video glitched and the screen cut to static. That same night, the humming returned, this time shaking the metal handrails along the spiral stairs. The hatch was wide open. Inside, the shaft descended into pitch darkness. Something about the air rising from it made Jesse gag, sweet and sour, like rotting citrus. "Let me back in. I forgot my shoes." Paul wanted out, but they couldn't reach anyone. The satellite uplink had gone dead. Jesse tried to focus on normalcy, cooking, reading, taking notes. It didn't swim. It didn't blink. Just floated, watching. He called his father up, but by the time Paul climbed the stairs, the water was empty again. The inside of the tower was found trashed. Scratches along the walls, spiral symbols etched into the stair rails, and water pooling where no leak was found. That night, Paul slept with a wrench in his hand. Jesse didn't sleep at all. The final turning point came on day 25. They'd planned to rest after lunch. His boots still sat neatly beside the hatch. His coat hung by the stove. Jesse searched everywhere. The docks, the cliffs, the basement, in the oil tank room. He found it, a trail of wet prints leading to the old maintenance shaft. one that had been used in decades. He slammed the hatch shut and bolted it from the outside. Night fell fast. Jesse secured every lock in the tower, shoved furniture against the door, and retreated into the beacon housing at the top of the lighthouse. That's when the tapping began. It came from every side, gentle at first, then more urgent. Then a voice, low and familiar, whispered through the fogged glass. "Jess." He didn't open the door. The voice returned 4 more times that night, each time more distorted, less human. The final time it came, it wasn't asking, "You're the one they want." The power cut out just before dawn. The light died. The timing stopped. He was rescued 2 days later when the backup supply vessel arrived for its bi-weekly drop. Jesse was half-starved and near catatonic. Paul Hargrove was never recovered. No traces, no prints, no fall. When investigators reviewed Jesse's footage, the final recorded clip, a blurred reflection in the beacon glass, showed a pale face standing just behind Jesse, grinning. That lighthouse has since been decommissioned. Local fishermen say the beacon still flickers sometimes, even though no one's lived there since at low tide. If you're close enough to Grey Marsh Reef, you might hear a distant hum and someone calling your name.